Welcome to the Electric Monks podcast. Holistic interrogation tape number 6, Deanne Tremlett.
Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the Electric Monks podcast. My name, of course, is Edward Hunter. My guest today, my interviewee today is the wonderful Deanne Tremlett. Have I got your name right, Deanne?
You have, yes.
Because I believe in my notes I called you Trevet for some reason. I think it auto-corrected it to Trevet, which I apologise for, but it is Tremlett, so...
That's not the worst it's been.
Okay. But anyway, Deanne is the creative director of Guggleton Farm Arts and is running and organising the first ever Don't Panic Festival in Stallbridge in Dorset on Towel Day, 25th of May, which is why, for those watching the video, if we use the video, I've got this big towel around the back of me.
Lovely towel. I like your towel.
It's one I got given for free. Well, not for free, actually. It was for a Kickstarter thing. Anyway, long story. But but anyway, I'm sure people are really, really excited about this, even if they're only just hearing about what Don't Panic Festival is. My first question, Deanne, is what is Guggleton Farm Arts and how did you become their creative director? So tell us a bit about yourself and your journey.
Oh, right. Well, I'm an artist. I've been an artist all my life. Even before I knew I was an artist, my first ever teacher told my parents I was an artist. So that was great. But so I trained as a fine artist at the Slade and Wimbledon College of Art, and really started to feel that as a plumber's daughter, there was a real need for art to become less high, if you like. So I'm really, really interested in how communities work with art and how art can break down barriers and bring communities together. So I employ my art almost in a conceptual way. It's not, I do paint. I paint a lot when I can. But generally speaking, my art is about creating communities as opposed to pieces of stuff, which people maybe don't want to buy.
So it's a more, dare I say, holistic approach then to art.
Absolutely. Good detective work. No, so the Gug itself is a rural arts community organisation based, as you said, in Stallbridge, North Dorset. It began organically and it was one of those things that I just sort of asked people what they wanted creatively in their life, because there's not much, as you will know, outside of anywhere large in the countryside. Culture can kind of feel like it's meant to be in a petri dish, and it feels like you can't get it. You have to travel to get your culture. And so we did things. We started as a CIC, Community Interest Company, in 2020. And then lockdown happened. But I spent a lot of time during lockdown researching and getting the farmyard that we had available to us up and ready to just do. We did opera, we did all sorts of things. We did filming, and we did exhibitions and sculpture and pottery and painting. And so it's an organically grown community arts centre which lived in an old farmyard. Which was called Guggleton Farm. So there you go. It was founded by a lovely lady called Isabel de Pelle, who sadly died last week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
During her, very, very sad. But as part of her sort of stepping back from her commitments, she sort of gave me the farm to do what I would with. And this is what I chose to do, peppercorn rent, that kind of thing.
It's a big decision, and that's lovely to hear that a legacy is sort of intact, because in a way this event, and we might get into it, is a little bit about a legacy in many ways of both Douglas and Isabel as well. So that's really lovely that people are continue. It's a lot of, at least you got two shoulders for both legacies, right? So
absolutely.
So obviously you've been doing being the creative director for the Gug for at least since just before the pandemic, so that would be about 6 years ago, wouldn't it? But how long have you been? Let's talk about the other side of that. Let's talk about the Douglas Adams side of it. When did you first get, and how, more importantly, do you get first introduced to Douglas Adams?
This is a bizarre story, actually. I'm the mother of two children, and the eldest was really into football. And locally, I think when they were about 6 or 7, um, there was a local football club in Stourbridge, youth football club, and they were looking for a chairperson. And so I became the chairperson of Stourbridge Football Club in order to help it to keep going so that my child could play football. It's very bizarre. It's the kind of thing a mother does. And that's also quite opposite to this conversation about what happened about Douglas being in Stourbridge when he started writing The Hitchhiker's Guide. So I stepped in to be chairman, and I noticed one day that on the crest on the football tops, and this is like nearly 30, well, my son's now 26, so we're talking 20 years ago, that there was a rocket on the uniform. And I said, why is there a rocket on your kit? And they said, well, Douglas Adams, lived in Stourbridge. And so 20 years ago, I started thinking about this as quite a shame that no one knew. And I asked everyone who wanted to talk about it, I asked when I started the Gug, so 6 years ago, I started asking questions about this creative person. And so many people said, oh, no, that's just a myth. He never wrote here. And other people said, oh, no, he did. And then I happened to happen across his sister about 5 years ago. And she told me that, yes, this is what happened. And she told me the full story. And so from this, happen chance of spotting the rocket on the football kit to meeting his sister and then understanding the real narrative behind how he came to begin to write in Stourbridge.
Yes, because isn't the story that his mum, Janet, said to him one day when Douglas was unemployed and spending a lot of days just in the bath, not doing very much, for God's sake, Douglas, do something. And that is sort of the metaphorical kick up the backside that he needed to write Hitchhikers in the 76, essentially, wasn't it? Or 75.
Yeah, he was in London at first, and he was trying to pursue a career as an actor, and also he did lots of strange jobs. I think he was a bodyguard at one point
for like a Middle Eastern
and he kept
family.
he kept kind of, yeah, he kept writing home saying, I'm fine. But Janet, who was a feisty and quite a character, as I understand it, kind of read between the lines and kind of knew that he wasn't fine. And so went up in the car and picked him up and brought him home and basically sent him to his room and said, Douglas, do something, anything. And it took him a while. His younger brother, James, talks of noises and paper and things being thrown about. And it took him a while, but I think in many ways, Stourbridge kind of healed, him or even maybe galvanized him into wanting to do something, anything, as Janet said.
I think he had this very from reading a lot of biographies about him, he had this very early, he sort of wanted to be, was it John Cleese? And then he realized the position was already taken, essentially. And he was trying to get into Footlights.
Absolutely.
And they didn't let him in.
Yeah.
They didn't let him into Footlights. So him and, was it Adam Smith Adams, the sort of, who made his own group, essentially, to sort of get around it. And he was the one writing a lot of their sort of material.
It's kind of like Not the Footlights kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Which is funny because didn't his mate John Lloyd made Not the 9 O'Clock News as well, so later on, so which he was also a little bit involved
did, yeah. And he lived with Graham Chapman for quite a while as well, and I think he wrote a bit for. I think he was the only person ever to write for Python who wasn't a Python.
Yeah, and I think infamously they were trying to write, was it Graham Chapman's biography that Douglas was supposed to write of him, and they sort of fell out because Douglas sort of found it really difficult to work with, which is kind of ironic when you think of the John Lloyd also fell out with Douglas at one time and then later made up, and then Michael Bywater, who was his big friend, inspiration for that, they fell out over like the novelization of Starship Titanic years later. So yeah, Douglas has this sort of a little bit of that. He was brilliant, but he did occasionally that genius sort of needed one cook in the kitchen, as it were, rather than multiple ones.
I think so. I mean, he definitely fell out with quite a few people, but it was mainly creative difference rather than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we get back onto my list of questions because I seem to have gone a bit off topic.
Yeah, sorry, we
What?
got
No,
off
it's my
everywhere.
bad. No. What inspired you to create
Yeah,
Don't Panic Festival specifically now in 2026? Obviously, it's 25 years since Douglas's passing.
yeah,
So, did it just feel like the right
yeah.
time? Was it something you'd always wanted to do and now felt like you had enough sort of
Yeah,
momentum?
it was something because of the situation with our landlady who was ill and unfortunately now passed. We had to get out of the farmyard, and as a community arts organisation, we were able to do everything that we'd done before, like the social prescription and things like that. But we couldn't do the experimental stuff, the stuff we used to. At one point, we had Anthony Irvin, the Iceman, come and melt a block of ice at the studio in the gallery to show people locally what was possible with creativity. And that was a thing that, as an artist, I've always struggled with what is art, as everyone does. But it felt really like we weren't doing anything really to challenge the community. So I thought, what better than to challenge the community to come together? And Stourbridge as a town is very much like, it's the smallest town in Dorset, but it's also growing fast because of the need for homes. I mean, this is a reality. But we don't have a doctor's surgery and the infrastructure is really small. There's very little public transport. And so it feels very much lately that it's become quite thinly spread. And so I felt quite strongly, and so did my co-directors at the Gug, that we needed something that would bring the town together in a fun way, so everyone could meet their neighbours in a sense, and in a very Douglas sense, something quite, I suppose, not original, but also just a bit strange. And also I was kind of fed up with the narrative being constantly questioned by people who even had lived in the town for 20 years. And I thought, hang on a minute, we need to put Stourbridge in the Douglas Adams story. And we also need to celebrate the fact that when Douglas came to Stourbridge, I mean, his parents had owned a house here since 1964, and he was backwards and forwards from college and school. But he actually came and lived properly and he began to write. And that is almost like, and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy began embryonically in his bedroom in Stourbridge. And that part of it, that mother's love, that safe space was enabling. And so I kind of had this strange underground narrative of Stourbridge being the town that saved the galaxy. And it's a wonderful place. It's got a great community. The arts, it embraced the arts organisation that I was running, which was really very ad hoc, beautifully. And so it deserves something like the town deserves Douglas. The town deserves to be acknowledged as somewhere that helped this thing to happen. So that's why. Does that make sense?
Yes, does sort of make sense, yeah, because a lot of what you hear about Douglas's family is very, very nurturing and supportive, especially when you consider Douglas's parents divorced when he was quite young as well, and he spent a lot of his childhood in like RSPCA homes surrounded by animals, and I think that does.
Yeah.
You get a very big sense of that later on when he gets interested in animal conservation in Last Chance to See, and we got Mark Carding coming to the festival as well, which is great. So it'd be really exciting to hear he has to say.
He had quite an absurd and almost, I suppose, I mean, Sue talks about it. We've been doing a zine called The Stourbridge Prophet. And the Stourbridge Prophet, of course, is Douglas because he was so, I suppose, prophetic in the things he wrote about. Basically, The Hitchhiker's Guide is an iPad, and he talked about the Babel fish and lots of things which have and even people like Zuckerberg says, actually, we read Douglas and then we had to back invent, But I think one of the things that Sue said was their childhood was so bizarre. It was a mixture of several different things. There was a huge amount of goodwill, but they always knew that Janet was there, and she was a hugely, I suppose, strong but also loving person, and
Very nurturing, yeah.
Very nurturing, and the fact that she did this wonderful motherly action and brought him home, basically launched his career. And then he was able to go back to London and meet with Simon Bratt and meet with John Lloyd and take it from there. And I think that there's something really human and beautiful in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially,
Go on.
sorry.
I was going to say that part of the story, you're right. It is a bit sort of kind of, oh, he just came up with this idea one day, and it deserves to be every bit of celebrated as the radio series itself.
The narrative is that he laid on his field drunken in Innsbruck in 1971 and thought, why doesn't someone write Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? But the book is so much more than that. And the humanity in the book and the pathos in the book is part of the story. You know, he came up with the title in Innsbruck, but he came up with the story in Stallbridge.
Yeah, I think Douglas would be very amused to hear that he's the Stallbridge prophet, because he had some interesting views on religion, especially as he
did.
Older, so.
That's the funny thing about it. That is just hilarious. You know, he was actually, he was a staunch atheist, but a prophet doesn't have to be religious.
No. Yeah, you can prophesize. Yeah, exactly.
You can prophesize on anything.
You can just predict things, as Douglas did, without it being religious connotation.
Exactly.
Yeah, but anyway. So one thing we sort of hinted at, because obviously there are a lot of Douglas Adams related events that take place in London and Cambridge, and I've been to some of the London ones, like the Memorial Lecture, which is lovely. It usually takes place at the Royal Geographical Society, which is a really nice building, and Douglas's family usually comes along for the day, and there's a couple of guest speakers and things like that. So do you think this is something, because obviously we don't really have a lot of Douglas Adams events in rural areas, period, let alone in North Dorset, so there is certainly a novelty to this. Do you think that there's a real space for this? And I'm wondering, just to make my question slightly more interesting, because I realize it's slightly boring.
It's not.
How big?
How can you say?
Well, I'm just wondering. So the first part of this is our Douglas Adams events too sort of London and Cambridge centric, which sort of makes sense. He spent a lot of time in both locations. And B is, how big do you want this to be? Because you talked a lot about how this is mainly sort of targeted at the people who live in Stallbridge, sort of understandably, and to sort of give them a taste of that sort of culture and challenge them in interesting ways with Douglas's art. But how much do you want this to be a thing that idiots like me from out of town come and visit, and sort of how big do you want this ultimately to be if it keeps going in the next couple of years?
Well, I suppose those are two kind of completely different questions.
I know, right?
So,
to be fair, somebody did ask me to ask that, so I thought this would be a good way.
No problem. I think historically, yes, Cambridge and London have been the focuses of celebrations for Douglas, and rightly so, because he studied in Cambridge and he eventually came on to produce the radio show and write the subsequent, trilogy, in inverted commas, in London. But Stallbridge was the place where everything coalesced for him when it came to actually thinking about. I mean, the story is that he was working on a narrative. He lived on Grove Lane, where we're going to have a blue plaque unveiled on Tal Day for him. I just have to say, paid for by Dorset Council. It
does have the Dorset Council logo on it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. No, it just says Dorset Council on it. But there was a wonderful, I think it was Victorian, or there was a glove factory, because Stallbridge used to be famous for its mulberry trees and silk and all that kind of thing. And there was a glove factory at the end of his garden. And from about 1975, and he would have witnessed this, it started being demolished. And then I think in 1976, it was the workers' cottages that were being demolished. And this was literally out of his bedroom window. And so this idea of the whole of, and no one knew it was going to happen because the planning had been put in, but it was that time of the world that people, it was all a very no one's, why is that being knocked down? Because we weren't, planning was, it just happened. Things just happened to people like this. And this gave him the idea of the fact that the world would be destroyed and no one knew because the planning was on a different planet and hidden in the loft, in the bottom drawer of a of a filing cabinet in a different galaxy.
With
So
beware
he
of the
watched
leopard
this
on the
happen,
front
and he
door,
came up with
yes.
this. Absolutely, and he came up with this idea that the world would be destroyed, and he came up with the concept. I think he called it the ends of the earth.
That's it. Yes, there were
And
originally different ways
yeah,
it was going to end. So that was just one of
different
them.
ways that the world was going to end. And I understand from his brother that he never really wanted to be a sci-fi writer, but that once he destroyed the earth in the first chapter, there was nowhere else for him to go. So I think one of the things I'm saying to you is that I don't really know, because the way this book happened to Douglas is the way the festival has kind of happened to us. We wanted it to happen. We started looking into it. And originally the idea was that it would be, because Stallbridge has a lack of infrastructure, it has a lack of, and we've grown so much. It was originally envisaged as a way to bring the whole of the community together. Because I thought to myself, well, there's something in Adams for everyone. It's absurd, but it's also got social commentary. It's funny, but it also has serious messages to give us about how we live our lives. And it's, at the end of the day, it's human and social commentary. And I thought to myself, well, this is a book, unlike many, that can unite a whole community. And so that was the first idea. And then being just, I had no concept really of how huge and hugely the community around Douglas is. And so what we've tried to do this year, and partly because we're unveiling the plaque, and also because at the moment where we're doing it at the recreation field, I don't know if you've seen any photographs of Stallbridge, but at one point the high street is about 3 meters wide. So, honestly, and we've got the oldest complete market cross in the country, and it's in the middle of the high street. And I don't mean the middle of the high street, I mean literally in the middle of the high street. You have to drive around it to get down the street. So it's a small rural community that's grown exponentially over the last few years, and it needs bringing back in. And that was the idea, which is why we've been pitching it as something to reunite the community and something to really get everyone together and feel the power of creation, the power of creativity to change the world, which is what Douglas did. And then we kept getting people say, oh, we want to do this and we want to do that. And the wonderful Stephen Fry endorsed us. And we've had Douglas's, Dirk Maggs, who did the stage play.
And the radio series,
has lent us Marvin, the paranoid android. And so we've got Marvin as our star guest. We could have had a lot more star guests, but we just thought we just don't want this to be too big this year. We want it to be manageable. We want it to be fantastic. We've limited tickets, but we do want you to come another year. I think that's what we're saying, is that let us get this right for us and launch it. And then I believe, and I've certainly spoken to the rest of my committee, because it's not just me. I've got a 10-strong committee and a much bigger group in the town that's really behind this. And to be honest, the whole community is behind it. We've had money from the town council, the county council. And I think we definitely want to make it bigger, but we want to help it to grow to grow in a, I don't know how to articulate.
You want it to be a bit more organic.
Organically.
Yeah.
Yeah, organically, and in a cultured way. And I mean that in both senses of the word. So yes, we want you to come. Please come, Ed, but not this year. No, you can come this year. I'd love it if you came this year.
I'm getting mixed messages here.
No, definitely want you to come this year, Ed. Please come.
All right, okay.
I'll give you you can have a VIP arm bracelet. But yes, we want people to come, and we would love it if we're actually going to do a global live stream, so people all over the planet can watch the festival should they choose to, especially the unveiling of the plaque. And we do in the future want people to come. It's just we feel almost like we want to have it for ourselves this first year, because who knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah, you don't want to sort of have not enough to go around in terms of like toilet facilities and stuff like that as well.
I mean, if Zuckerberg flies in on his helicopter, that's going to completely ruin everything.
Well, on multiple levels, you're right there. Speaking of, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned there that Stephen Fry backed it. Is there any kind of story about how he got in touch? Because obviously he was a great friend of Douglas's.
Well, I mean, obviously he's a great friend of Douglas's. My friendship with Sue, I said to her, because when we first started to launch it and we wanted grants, I thought if we could get a celebrity endorsement, that would really, really help us. So through Sue, we contacted him and said, we're doing this, what do you think? And he did us a lovely video, which is on the website, saying how fantastic and saying how pleased he thought Douglas would be, which was really great, because lots of people say, oh, Douglas would love that. But actually, he knew that Douglas would love that. And he said that he thought Douglas would be really pleased with what we were doing. And so, yeah. And also, he is the founding member of our Founding 42, which is people who donate to the individuals who donate to the festival. Because I'm not sure if I said at the start, as a CIC, we're completely non-profit. So we're not doing this for our own financial gain, any of us. We're doing it to celebrate Douglas and to bring the community together. And also to make sure that there is some lasting and grounded celebration of Douglas. In a really, with a sense of place. And I think one of those things is that this Founding 42 have all paid £420. So bless him, Sir Stephen Fry paid us £420 as the founding member of the 42. And yeah, I've actually, it's great. I've got the CIC's bank account and it says Sir Stephen Fry, £420. And unfortunately, he's actually president of Hay this year, so he can't be with us. And but he has pledged to make an appearance at some point in the future, as have several other people who, you know, who have, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's
see.
Like you said, there are a few really nice guests. There's lots of live music that's being played by some, I understand, some local bands as well. There's Kevin John Davies who's coming around, who worked with on Douglas's TV series of Hitchhikers, among many other things. So Kevin is, he made this wonderful book, 42, the wild improbable ideas of Douglas Adams, that I've got here as well, which is all about another thing that I backed on Kickstarter. And again, I think definitely we got people there who were fairly close to Douglas, who knew him and can give great insight as well. So which is
absolutely. And there's Kevin and also Dave Haddock from Cambridge, who runs the tours and also has a huge amount of memories of Douglas and also memorabilia. He's going to be there. As I said, the family are going to be there, and Marvin is going to help to unveil the plaque.
Absolutely. Well, that is certainly be worth waiting for. One of the aims of the festival, and you say in the mission statement on the website, is to ignite a love of reading amongst children in Stallbridge and also more widely. Obviously, Douglas wrote a lot of his work in the late 70s and during the 1980s. So how do you think it... Obviously, the messages are quite universal, as you touched on earlier. How do you think it appeals to today's kids? I think there's a lot of parents who do read Hitchhikers to their children. In fact, that's how I got into it. But I feel like something like Dirt Gently, people are less likely to, because it's a slightly different genre.
I think it's all bound up in the idea of don't panic in many ways. I mean, one of the things that very early on when I was doing this, I went round to all the societies and I spoke to I spoke to the headmaster of the school, and he said that one particular child in his school was using climate change as a reason to not do his homework. Because he said, what was the point of going to university if there wasn't going to be a planet anyway? So it was that idea of the fact that Douglas and Mark Carwadine and the Last Chance to See actually saved a flightless bird and the rhino shows the power of selling 15 million books worldwide. A creative person wrote that book, got a platform, and then saved a species of animal. And I think that's the message that we can come back to. And he gives you permission to think that you can change the world. It gives you permission to question authority, systems, assumptions, and even reality itself in many ways. And I think that's a really playful thing for kids. And when they're hearing constantly, climate change, doom, gloom, wars, and that is the narrative that they're hearing, because, great news doesn't sell newspapers or whatever, I don't know. But the universe is really strange, it's chaotic, and that's okay. Don't panic about that, because there's still great things to be done. And if we come together creatively, or even if we do our best to be as creative as we can and we get our ideas out there, they can change the world. And I think that's the thing. Douglas did change the world, and not just because he imagined a two-headed idiot that flew around the universe in a spaceship that could do whatever it wanted, but because he saved the flightless bird.
Exactly. It really annoys me. And there was a audiobook about Douglas's legacy and career, I think, called Ends of the Earth. And one of the pundits on it, who is a very questionable character, to put it very, very mildly, said, "Oh, Douglas's books are nihilism for babies," and that always annoyed me. Not least because that person was also accused of doing some very horrible things as well. But anyway, I don't want to talk about Max Landis anymore. The guy who wrote the American Dead Gently series. So yeah. But anyway, so it's so refreshing that you have a completely different view to what I've been forced and subjected to. But anyway, just sort of touching on that. A little bit, because one of the things you said is that Stephen Fry said, "Oh, Douglas would enjoy this," and it's a phrase that we hear a lot from, and I don't think it's always meant in. I think it's always comes from a place where people mean it quite genuinely. There was a lot of stuff. I think the most obvious example of this is Elon Musk made an AI called Grok. I think a chatbot that was sort of based on. He claimed, at least, it was based on Douglas's work in Hitchhikers, and one of the Douglas's proteges, a guy called Arvin Ethan David, he was, I remember at one point he was trying to promote AI journaling project, and he said, "Oh, if Douglas were around today, he would have loved this, he would have used it, he would have endorsed it." And I feel like there's people who are coming from a place where they genuinely believe that, and they don't mean it in a nasty way, but it's sort of where people have sort of ended up going against Douglas's values almost without realizing it, and I think that sort of shows the pitfalls, doesn't it? So that's I was wondering how do we make sure we stay true to that we're not sort of compromising Douglas's values, especially when there's money on the table as well. Hopefully, I mean, there's not a huge amount involved in this compared to the AI or whatever.
No, I mean, that's how Stephen Fry and Douglas met. The two of them bought the first two Apple Macs.
They did, yeah,
in the UK.
And Gently's written on. There was one of the first books written on Apple Mac as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, we're going to have a couple of his Douglas's original computers at the festival that people can have a quick on. We're not sure if we can actually boot them up, but we'll see. I think we have to be really careful about putting the words into the mouths of people who aren't here, and we all know that. But what stands out is that Douglas, it wasn't simply that he loved technology, it was that he was constantly questioning humanity's relationship to technology, and he was really deeply concerned with ethics. And it's the unintended consequences of inventing things. I mean, it does go through the books, the unintended consequences of administration, the unintended consequences of building a road. We talk about people being, compulsory purchase, that kind of thing, and their houses are gone somewhere they've lived all their lives. The unintended consequences of what we call progress. And but what he also did, he questions environmental destruction. He questions in his book environmental destruction, bureaucracy, power structures, and human absurdity. He does those things, but he also loved to drive a Porsche. He was a dichotomy himself. And I think the fact that he was over a lot of things makes it very easy for people to say, oh, he would have loved this. But what they're missing when they look at that is the fact that he did question our relationship with these things. And he wasn't as one-dimensional as that. He was multi-dimensional.
It's almost like he was a real person.
It's almost like he was a real person. And I think the best way to honour him is by not assuming he'd automatically approve of anything. Or like anything, or endorse anything, and that's the best way. It's just to say, this was inspired by my relationship with Douglas Adams' work, because let's not forget, a lot of these people never even met him.
Yeah,
I didn't meet him.
I was only about 6 when he passed away, so that's my excuse.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but yeah, anyway, I think I absolutely
I
agree
just
with
think
you
we have
on
to
that.
embrace. We just have to embrace technology with the same kind of curiosity and
Mm,
skepticism that he had, and I think I know coming back to "Don't panic" again. It's such a wonderful phrase. It doesn't suggest don't worry.
mm.
It's permission, and it's. I always think don't panic and keep curious. Stay curious is what. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
right. I've been taken off guard by somebody else
Sorry.
being in the room with you,
Okay,
but
I
that's
suppose
fine.
don't panic. It's not an instruction to stop thinking.
Mm,
Um, and I think at the festival we want to create more conversations around what's happening in the world and why um, climate change is not a good excuse not to do your homework.
yeah. I think panicky people often aren't looking in the right areas and aren't asking the right questions, is sort of my
Yeah,
view on it anyway.
I mean,
So it certainly doesn't help.
the the thing is, a flightless bird in New Zealand, a bird that for some reason over years had become really fat and decided not to fly because it had no predators.
Mm,
But also because it had no predators, it got really lazy
mm.
and didn't even want to, reproduce. And also, but on the other side, of that coin, of course, you have the rhino, which was actually hunted into almost
Mm,
extinction. But they're all products of evolution, of creation, and Douglas was as interested in both of them. So I think one of the things about him is he was so, I suppose, non-judgmental, but he was also extremely curious and questioning. So he would look into something, but he wouldn't judge it necessarily. And I think that's one of the things that is really missing today
mm,
is that lack of judgment. I think that was one of the things that was great about what I've read about him and what I've heard about him is that he was extremely curious but also skeptical, but he wouldn't be judgy about that. And that curiosity and that creativity married together is beautiful because it does actually make things happen.
mm.
And yeah, that's it really. That's what I'm trying
Okay.
to say. And if we could all understand the power of coming together to create and the changes that that can make in our society, then that would be an amazing legacy amongst all the others that he's created.
Yes, exactly. One of the things that's mentioned on the website in terms of the mission statement is about sort of local animal and sort of insect species, and sort of from a conservation
Yeah,
perspective there.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, we talked a bit about Mark Cardine and Last Chance to See
Mm.
and some of the animals that Douglas get. So, how are you going to incorporate that? Because that's obviously more of a legacy thing. You're not going to have people on the day trying to scoop up
No,
animals. Look at this
no.
animal that I've saved. That would be a bit
Well,
silly.
so the legacy there is we're making sure that we leave the site. So we're doing an environmental
Hmm.
survey of the site that we're using before and after to make sure we're not even allowing people to use tent pegs in case they spear a worm. No, not really. No, it's true. It's actually true. We're having
I
no
have to
single
warn
use
that next
plastic.
time I'm setting up a Cub Scout camp.
Absolutely. No single use plastic,
Hmm.
no discharging any liquids to the ground. Um, those are all things that we have put dyed in the wall in the festival because that's essential. But going forward, one of the things that we've been looking at in Strawbridge because of the large amount of new builds, and people need homes, don't get me wrong, I'm not against those. But what we are against in many ways is the fact that these companies that build the houses and they bring in non-indigenous species of flora, sorry, into the area, and the local fauna can't, they can't live on them. What we're trying to do as an organisation going forward is to try and re-establish local and more wild habitats, which are in keeping with the local ecology. And that's one of the maxims of the GUG, and the Don't Panic Festival will support the GUG in doing that, in making sure that we are, whenever we are And actually, one of the byproducts of all of this process is the fact we've set up a CLT, Stourbridge Community Land Trust, which is looking to realise a lot of those missions and pledges, which is looking to help people make the right and wise choices with regard to planting and all those, to support the local fauna, really. And it's a long-term project, don't get me wrong. It's not a ship you turn around overnight. And it took a long-term time to save the rhino. And we're not talking rhino, we're talking smooth-skinned snakes.
Mm. Yeah, so that is good to hear. I think was it sort of there was a percentage on the website, but I can't remember off the top of my head of sort of
63%.
63. That was it. Yes, that we
Yeah.
were sort of trying to try and aim for. So let's hope. Obviously, we're not going to know until it's several months in time whether how that's getting along. But yeah, fingers
But
crossed
that's,
on that one.
you know, a legacy begets a legacy, and that's the thing about them.
Mm. So I think we got to my final question then,
Oh,
which
crikey.
is yes, I know, right? So
Mm.
we've done it in less just
Oh,
under an
this is
hour.
your favorite. This is your favorite question as well,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think.
So obviously we're the Electric Monks podcast, so there's a bit of a Dirt Gently theme to what we do.
Well, I
So
have something to tell you for that then.
okay. So the
Sorry, go and
question,
ask the question.
can I ask the question just so people
Yes.
can follow this conversation? So would you consider future festivals incorporating somewhat of a Dirt Gently theme? Doesn't have to be the whole festival; it could just be a little corner in there. Because obviously, you didn't write Dirt Gently in Stallbridge, but it's sort
No,
of part of that journey that started with him writing Hitchhikers in Stallbridge, and then he really starts with him working on Doctor Who, essentially, of him writing Sharda and City of Death, and
absolutely.
Sharda getting canned because of industrial strikes, so he wanted to reuse the material, and he ends up writing essentially this. It's sort of kind of the closest we get to Douglas writing a biography, because Richard Macduff is very, very similar to how Douglas thinks of himself. And then you've got Dirk,
Definitely.
who's essentially Michael Bywater, Richard being this unreliable boyfriend to Susan Way, which is sort of Douglas sort of slyly commenting on his own sort of messy love life a little bit at the time. And yeah, I don't think he had an electric monk wandering around, but I think that's more of an
Yeah.
artistic license. But yeah, anyway, so next year is the 40th anniversary of him finally getting the book out, because it was supposed to come out in 86, and then basically all sorts of things were going on in his life, and he'd only written the bit about the monk, like one sentence about it being on a rocky promontory on a bored horse, and that was it. And Phil said, "This is great. How does this fit in? Don't know. You have to wait." So he missed the Christmas deadline 86, and it came out in spring or October of 87, I think it was. So is that worth marking next year? Are we pure hitchhikers? Are we?
Oh God, no. Oh God, no. So I think one of the things that Sue always says about Douglas is that he famously said, "I love the sound of a deadline. I love the sound of it whooshing by." Well, actually, even this year, well, this is about Douglas. It's not necessarily. I mean, Don't Panic Festival is about. It's a wonderful thing to hang all of the concerns that we have as a society on now. You know, we've got Richard Hopkins, I don't know if you've heard of him, coming to the festival, who's this environmentalist and he travels to the future, and he's a spaceman. He does space travel, and he travels to the future, and he says, actually, it's fine. All the things we do now, turn the world around and we'll all be good. And he's coming to the festival to deliver
I heard
that
he
message.
traveled from the future. I didn't realize he was actually from our time as well. So I will have heard of it.
Yes, you will have heard of him. Yes, no, you will have heard of him. And he's coming to talk about how we do make a difference. And I think that the time travel in Hitchhikers is great. But there's a lot of that in Gently. There's a lot of that kind of, I suppose, this feeling of interconnectedness in Gently that maybe isn't as much in Hitchhikers. And this is, at the end of the day, Don't Panic is the title, and obviously Douglas is best known for Hitchhikers, and it is a Hitchhikers festival in that sense. But it's about celebrating the man, his legacy, and everything he believed in. So yes, Dirk Gently is actually at this festival. We've got a lovely group of 3 artists who I've worked with before as a curator, called The Fabulous Tres, and they are Liz Cares, Jonathan Donnelly, and Dale Perrett, and they are doing Dirk Gently at the festival. So we've got a murder, an investigation, a sofa in a strange doorway,
Nice.
and also an interconnected kind of red string thing going on. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but they
Okay, so
pitched it to
it's not
me
they're not just redoing the book. There's a live action Dirt
as
Gently
a live
inspired
action.
mystery.
Yeah.
Is
So
it
they
there?
pitched it to me, and I don't quite understand it myself, but that's what it's about.
Immersive theatre, we'll call it that.
Absolutely. So yes, in answer to your question, and also I kind of feel like the whole phrase holistic detective agency is a bit like working on a community project like this, because you have to connect completely unrelated people, um, and their ideas and their opinions into one thing. And so this holistic idea of doing the festival, it just marries perfectly. So yes, Dirt Gently will be at the festival, and next year we will certainly be giving it as much as we can.
Okay. I assume, much like Dirk Gently's detective agency, those that work under Dirk will not be paid a lot of money for their efforts.
This is possibly true. I mean, we are non-profit.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm sure if Dirk could have gotten away with that in the novels, he certainly would have tried to. But anyway,
Well,
but
yeah, we'll try and make something coherent before the universe collapses. Let's
all
just
right.
try.
Well, if I can come along and help, I might know a
Oh,
few
it would
things.
be
I'd be happy
wonderful.
to.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Just as soon as I can figure out the train tickets, I think it's like a 4.5 hour journey for me, and then definitely got to
Is it?
figure out
Well,
somewhere to stay overnight.
we've laid on a bus that will be going from Temple
Awesome.
Field Station to the festival site, backwards and forwards. So when you get off the train, there'll be a timetable somewhere for the bus coming back to collect you.
I love the sound buses make as they whoosh by. That's as much like deadlines. Anyway,
Yeah, there is that.
I think that's probably, before I ramble on too much, a good place to leave it. But Deanne, it's been wonderful to catch up with you. I look forward to going to the
Thank
festival.
you.
My first ever and probably only festival is Towel Day Ambassador, because you only get to do it one year, I
I
think.
know. I'm so excited. We've got the Towel Day Ambassador coming. It is
Uh,
epic. So I think you need some kind of crown, or I don't know.
I feel like that might be a bit self-indulgent. I think the
I
towel
think what
suffices.
we'll do is because we're gonna have some towels that we've made for the festival.
Ooh.
They've all been sort of upcycled and handmade, but we will present you, I think, with an honorary Towel Day Ambassador towel.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm not worthy of that. I've been doing this
Okay,
silly
well,
Douglas Adams podcast for like 7, 8
oh,
years now, but I don't think that's
there might be a pint of cider in it too.
sure.
I mean, it
Anyway,
is Dorset after all.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, it would be almost a shame not to. But anyway,
Brilliant.
as I say, Dan, it's been wonderful talking to you about it. I really hope it's a success, and yeah, I guess I'm gonna come along with a camera, film as much as I can before the camera runs out of battery and memory, and see if we can, cover as much of the festival as we can, and put our all into it. So
Brilliant.
obviously 25th of May is the big day, but I know 23rd there's a Matrix
Gargle Blaster.
Galactic Gargle Blaster competition,
Yeah.
which I'm
And we've got a Vogon. We've got a Vogon delegation coming to taste. They have said that subject to the Gargle Blasters being up to scratch, they might not
do their
destroy the Earth.
poetry. All right.
Do their poetry. But they have to make sure that it's all been signed in triplicate before they'll commit to anything.
Yeah. And
Um,
Saturday, 24th, I
yeah,
know you're going to screen the 2005 Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy film
we are.
somewhere. I don't think you said where.
It's at the primary school
Oh, okay.
on little tiny chairs.
Okay. Well, I think the last
So
time I
that'll
did
be
watch the
absurd.
movie, I was in a junior school, not primary school. So it would bring back memories of that. And my
Well,
dad
this,
saying it wasn't as good as the book and all the radio
well,
series.
yeah, I mean, I know it divides people, especially in the fan zone, but a lot of the younger children in the village don't know the narrative. And unfortunately, it has a happy ending, which we all know Hitchhikers
And it's got
doesn't.
Stephen Fry in it as well. So there's,
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the good thing about it is that it gives people who, especially the younger people, I mean, it's a PG, so that's fine. Just an idea of the narrative for the next day,
Hmm.
because otherwise, I think it could be quite, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. Well, I
Why all
think
these people got two heads?
yeah. Well, to be fair, we've had our own sort of divisive thing with the American Dirt Gently series, which, to be fair, actually, the series itself, I don't have that many problems with, even though it's got very little to do with the novels. It's more the creators behind it that I had one or two sort of not great people, but
No,
or not
no.
one not particularly great
I've
person in
refused to
particular.
watch it. I love the British version. I've refused
Yeah.
to watch the
I
American.
love Sam Barnett in it because he's great in History Boys and loads of other things. He's a really great ambassador, and for people who that's their entry point, I
Yeah.
think that's great for them, and I don't deny them enjoying that at all. And like I said, there's like I can, if I'm in a certain state of mind, I can watch these things and sort of see what they see in it and put my books a little bit out of my mind for maybe an hour or so, and then at the
Yeah.
end I think, but hang on, like 2 hours later.
Why did I spend time in my life doing that? Yeah.
Or I watch Hitchhiker's movie and I think, hang on, how does Trillian get captured there? Because there's like one cut and she's like with Zaphod, and the next cut she's on the floor. How did that happen? Anyway,
How on earth
if you
did
watch
that
that scene
happen?
in the movie, it's like
Oh God,
edited.
I
It's
know,
always bothered me. But
I know,
it's not
I
the
know.
biggest issue with the movie, but it's like on like how did it just how, and then Arthur's going, oh, it's all my own fault that she got captured. How did that? What? How is it your fault? What are you talking about? There was a
Exactly, he wasn't even in the scene.
no, I've read the original shooting script, and it does explain. So what they shot is clearly different to what they ended up editing for like time or something like that. That Arthur accidentally pushes Trillian over in a basically a stampede that happens in that scene, and they've cut that out. So now Arthur's like guilty for no reason. Anyway, this is 20 years ago. Why am
That's
I?
very Arthur. That's very Arthur Dent, though. So
That's
I
true.
suppose
That's
we
true.
just
It's
have
not.
to
It's
go with
not.
that.
It's not that it doesn't work. It feels a bit out of nowhere, and I think
Yeah.
maybe that sums up some bits of.
Well, you'll be
maybe-
able to ask Marvin what really happened when you're there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll also ask him what he thinks of the Hitchhiker's live experience in London, which is the latest controversial Hitchhiker's adaptation.
I didn't go. I was
Me
planning to
neither.
go, and I couldn't get tickets. And then I had heard something that I didn't want to hear, and I didn't go.
Well, I mean, the thing that broke me is I think there's a rap number at the end of it, and at the end of it, Marvin says, "Oh, I feel happy now," which to me felt very
That's
obviously
exactly what I heard. That is
Yeah.
exactly what I heard. Honestly,
heresy.
you should hear him whining in the lockup. I mean, he's saying, "I'm starving," and I say, "Starving, Marvin, shut up." No, he's in the lockup, and honestly, he will not shut up.
I
So,
don't think we will either at this rate. But anyway, so
cheers, Ed.
cheers. You have a lovely rest of the day. You and your partner, who I see my head in the background earlier.
He keeps running. He keeps shouting things like, "Don't forget the cider." Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Anyway, thanks to both of you. Goodbye. Cheers.
Bye.